Welcome to episode 052 of the Beacon broadcast. It's September 16th, 2024. Kodax, that's me. I'm here in the studio, and I am not joined by anybody today, but Ravenheart has provided us with some reporting that I'll be including throughout the podcast, so you can look forward to hearing from him shortly. So first, I'm going to jump into what I have been playing, and that would be Astrobot for PlayStation 5. My physical copy finally showed up. So real quick, I'm just going to kind of share what we got with the physical copy, which comes with a little bonus that most games don't exactly get these days. A lot of physical games, you're lucky, to get the physical game, let alone just a sleeve, a box, and a disc. For this one, Astrobot does come with a sleeve with some cool interior art. Of course, the disc. There is a voucher code for some bonus content. Basically just early unlocks and a couple avatars for your PlayStation account. The cool thing that it has, though, is a double-sided poster that's pretty big. One side is kind of like it looks almost like a comic book sort of thing. And then the other side is like a PlayStation 5 that you can kind of see into and see all the bots kind of enjoying themselves and having a good time throughout the PlayStation 5 spaceship sort of thing that Astrobot kind of presents as being like the mode of travel for the bots in Astrobot. As for the game itself, I'm just, completely enamored like I hoped I would be. I knew what it was going to be. And what it is just pure joy every second that you're playing. Now, there are some frustrating moments, but by design, I should say. But generally speaking, the levels they just find a way to one-up themselves constantly and you just have a smile on your face like the whole time you're playing. And if you're a fan of PlayStation and really video games in general, you will find so many cameos in the form of bots in various costumes for not just first-party PlayStation titles, although there is a fair bit of that, but also a lot of third-party stuff. It's impossible to recognize everything that's in the game, I would have to think. They go to some really deep, obscure pulls for some of these, but I'm just really, really enjoying it. Even the stuff I don't recognize, I know is making someone else out there like really happy. The best part about Astrobot, the whole game is the best part of it, but what's really cool about this game is that at the end of each world, after you've defeated the boss, there's like a bonus level that opens up that's directly inspired in terms of gameplay by like a classic PlayStation franchise, some of them older, some of them newer, and I don't want to talk about it quite yet. I'm hoping maybe next week I'll have the game finished. Maybe friend of the show Ben will have the game finished, and maybe we can have a little discussion about what we liked about the game. But so just as a teaser, I'm absolutely loving it. I hope they do like DLC down the road for this, whether it be paid or free. I don't care. I want more Astrobot as soon as they can get it to me. So now I'm going to insert Rick's audio about what he's been playing.
Hi everyone, Ravenheart here. So the only thing I've been playing this week, as usual of late, is Pokemon Go. But this week I actually have quite a bit to talk about with that. Last week I mentioned that Gen 8 was coming back to Pokemon Go, and this whole season is pretty much themed around Gen 8. So they've brought in Dynamax, and in the near future, Gigantamax is really going to make its debut. The tag for Gigantamax is already in the search tool and stuff within Pokemon Go, so it's clearly coming. But the Dynamax battles and the power spots where you get the Dynamax energy and as well as Dynamax battles are already in Pokemon Go as of this week. Um, you can only interact with 8 power spots per day. Uh, it it rolls over at 6:30 a.m., which is unusual for Pokemon Go considering past features and stuff that have been in Pokemon Go that typically roll over at midnight, such as your buddy system, etc. They need to do something about how much they artificially limit players from interacting with the features in Pokemon Go. It's getting to the point where Pokemon Go is almost feeling like a game of artificial limitations. Um, and not to toot my own horn or anything, but from a development perspective, when I was in school, I was taught that this is bad game design. If you have to artificially limit a player by way of, message box or something, to tell them that they can't do something that they already did previously, just because you said so, that's called bad game design. And free to play is not an excuse for bad game design, in my opinion. It doesn't. It's crazy how much people overlook bad game design because something is free to play. Anyways, if I had a personal Twitter account or X account, which I don't, obviously there's the Studio Ravenheart X account, but it's not for this. I would be tweeting at Niantic right now, offering them a decent model on how they can limit their power spot interaction and their max battle interaction. And it's crazy that they offer 300 free max energies out of your 800 that you can get, allowing you to only then interact with 5 power spots because each one gives you 100. It's just ridiculous with the artificial limitations. And the max battles are super neat for Pokemon Go. It is really cool. I would love to do more with it and see more. I could see myself spending all day doing the Dynamax stuff, interacting with these new Dynamax features if it wasn't for these artificial limitations. It's ridiculous. Like I said, you can only get 800 max energy per day. Each power spot gives you 100. And you can only hold 1,000. Make it make sense. That's just ridiculous. You should be lifting the player up, not holding them down. And this is about as good as how it was when Mega Evolution debuted. Their original concept for that, where you had to spend 400 Mega Energy or whatever it was every time you wanted to Mega Evolve. So you constantly had to be doing Mega Raids, which they completely revamped and relaunched because it flopped hard. Everybody lost interest in Mega Raids and Mega Evolution completely, which was a neat concept, but they boofed it with their artificial limitations. Surprise, surprise, and here they are again doing the same thing. So I absolutely guarantee that what's going on with Dynamax is going to get revamped. There's no way that, even as interesting and engaging as it is to do these max battles, there's no way that players are just gonna, be okay with spending 15 minutes every day swiping some power spots and then that's it. That's all you get. It's just not going to go over well, I promise. So anyways, that's what I've been playing. Pokemon Go. I will be buying some stuff coming up shortly. but I don't have anything to report on that front this week. But stay tuned. In addition to what I just talked about, I also want to mention that to do a max battle costs like 250 max energy, and also all the field research has to do with either collecting max energy or engaging in max battles. So it's like you're walking around all day, spinning Pokestops, getting field research to do max battles, or spin the power spots when you're only allowed to spin like 5 to 8 power stops a day and engage in however many max battles you can afford with your 1,000 max energy limit and your 800 particles a day or whatever it is. So I just wanted to add that to what I was saying before.
So now that we've heard from Ravenheart, let's jump into another purchase of mine real quick. It's not something I can really play with or use quite yet, but I have picked up a PlayStation 5 disk drive attachment. Currently, this attachment is only for use with the PlayStation 5 Slim Digital Edition, which I do not own. But there is a newly announced use of this, and it has quickly become kind of a hot commodity. It's sold out at Amazon, Best Buy, and other retailers. Something I like the idea of a disk drive being detachable. Because, for example, my PS3, I have a PS3 Slim. Um, the disk drive has gotten a little unreliable in recent years. I've had issues playing discs. It won't eject a disc. And so I have to effectively, wait around, in hopes that it'll start working. And there's really no way to easily repair something like this at this point. I would have to get like another PlayStation 3, which is just not something I really want to do. So my PS3 disc collection is kind of, in limbo right now. Like if I want to use them, it might work. It might be able to install. I might be able to play off of it. But, I could be in the middle of my playthrough and then all of a sudden I could just get an error. It's only happened a couple times to me, but it is something that is getting kind of concerning. So when they announced that there would be a detachable disk drive for PlayStation 5, I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. On one hand, it shows the sign of, PlayStation 5, like physical copies, or PlayStation kind of moving away from discs, but still offering the option, as well as it being sort of a good idea for someone who disk drives are important to maybe get an extra one of these in case your disk drive fails on your PS5, and then you can just swap in the new one. Because 10, 15 years from now, my PlayStation 5, the disk drive might die. And since I have a launch disc PlayStation model, I'm not able to, if that dies, I can try to send it in for repair, find a third party to repair it, but that may not really be feasible at that point. Sony definitely won't be repairing them anymore, I'm sure. But with one of these, you can just detach it in and pop it in, or detach the old one, pop in the new one, and then unfortunately you have to activate the disk drive via the web. So that is something that's kind of concerning. It's probably the most concerning thing about these detachable disk drives is that you can't just stick one in there. It has to ping Sony servers and I guess authenticate the disk drive as being, an authentic Sony disk drive. So maybe they're trying to prevent third-party manufacturers from being able to do that. Now, it's possible Sony could undo that requirement at some point in the future. But for the time being, that's kind of how it is. So this detachable disk drive is kind of I don't know what they call it, a double-edged blade. On one side, it's pretty cool. It's handy. It makes your console more repairable by the user. and not having to like totally lose a $500 purchase. But on the other hand, having the online activation requirement is kind of sketchy, in my opinion. I'll get into why I have this disk drive shortly, but for now, just know that I was able to get my hands on one. Okay, so this past weekend, I went to the Destiny 10th anniversary art exhibit at Gallery Nucleus in Alhambra, California. Bungie is doing 3 of these art exhibit shows. One this month in Alhambra, Gallery Nucleus, or they refer to it, as Los Angeles. The second one in New York, I believe in New York City, and that's going to be next month in October. And then a third one in London in November. I'm not sure if each of these shows is going to be unique or if they're all going to carry the same art or what. I would kind of guess that based on the difference in time, it is sort of going to be a traveling thing. And I used to be a big time Destiny player. I'm not anymore. I haven't played in the last 5 years or so, not since Destiny 2 kind of first launched. My friend group from the first Destiny, we came over to Destiny 2. We beat the raid, then we beat the raid on Heroic, and then everyone stopped playing. People completely lost interest, and me included. And I just never came back to the game. I've heard it's had some ups and downs over the years, some really great times, some not so great times, but it just didn't sound interesting to me anymore, and it became such a time commitment to play it. Like for me, Destiny was originally sort of like a light MMO, meaning like a game that had this sort of massive online feel, which I enjoy, but like didn't require as much time out of me as an MMO did. And it felt like Destiny was trying to take up more and more and more of your free time, which I just wasn't for that anymore. Just lots of like pointless grinding, things being way too random, and so I just moved on from the game. But I still have a special love in my heart for Destiny, especially the first Destiny, Destiny 1. So I wanted to go to the exhibit. Unfortunately, there were no developers there. All of the art, it was tribute art effectively. Now, this is like official tribute art, like Bungie sanctioned and like merchandised art. So some of the artists were on hand to do a signing. They had, I'm going to say, maybe 16 to 20 different pieces available, maybe 16. And all of the art was available on these huge 24 by 36 posters, and they wanted $100 for each one. So I did not buy any of them. There was one poster in particular that I did really like, but to me, I just couldn't justify spending that kind of cash on a poster. Now, these posters, from what I understand, were not made by Gallery Nucleus, it appeared. It seems that Bungie had these shipped to the gallery for the event, and I'm guessing the prices were also set by Bungie. I maybe would have paid $50 for one of these, but $100, I could not stomach that at all. Now, the first 50 people each hour of the event, because you had to make a reservation by the first hour, second hour, then third hour, maybe a fourth hour. I think it went from 5 until 8 o'clock, something like that, a different period each hour. And the first 50 got a miniature version of the gig poster, which a gig poster is basically the thing that sort of advertises the event itself, if you don't know what that means. And this one was actually available as a full-size poster on like poster material, but this was more of a thick cardstock kind of print. And this particular poster is like it looks like a comic book cover, and they found a way to get a bunch of the main characters from the story on there, as well as kind of like frame it like a comic book cover would be, with up in the corner where it has like the little logo and says like how many cents it is. Instead of like the cost of it, it said it was 10th anniversary. So that was cool to at least be able to pick up a little something from the event. The event did also have a commemorative drink available, which they called Traveler's Tonic. Now, this was not like something in a bottle that I could take home that had like a, oh, what do you call it? Like a prepackaged item. So I actually have an image, or I took a picture of the ingredients. So I will quickly. Oh, sorry. It was called Reveler's Tonic, not Traveler's Tonic. I don't know why I thought Traveler. That makes more sense to me. But in it is lime juice, non-alcoholic. Oh gosh, I'm gonna mispronounce this. I've never heard it pronounced before. Curacao, curacao, apple juice, and sparkling grape juice. Anyways, the employee at Gallery Nucleus who mixed the drink, job well done. It was absolutely delicious. I went back for a second cup. But yeah, it had the little Destiny logo on the board. Of course, it wasn't something I could get. I'm a big fan of trying to collect like drink menus from gaming events, but that was not something I would have been able to do because it was chalk on a chalkboard. So just that's not going to preserve well. As for the event itself, so they had the signing, they had the art on display, the tribute art, and then upstairs they had concept art from the original Destiny, I believe, as well as 3 prop replica weapons, like from the game. Um, what else did they have? They also had ghost shells. So a ghost in Destiny is this like little sort of robotic, I don't know what you want to call it, buddy. I guess you have. You kind of pull it up, and it's think of it as almost like your smartphone, kind of in a way. Except it also has like a personality of its own. And they had special ghost shells that were designed and decorated and painted on and various different things by different artists. And those were probably the most impressive thing I saw there for sure. Um, a lot of the posters, like I said, there was one I really liked. The others weren't really super my thing for the most part. Um, they kind of went into like some sort of silly directions for some of them, I guess. Um, but again, I don't play Destiny anymore, so I don't know. Maybe that's what the fans were looking for. But I bumped into some old friends there too, so it was nice to see them. But other than that, it was a pretty brief experience at the event. Again, the gig poster that I got, that's definitely a cool piece. That would have been my number 2 had I wanted to get any of the full size posters. So having the miniature version of it, I'll take that as a consolation prize. So Rick has a Seraphim update for us this week, and I will insert that now for your listening pleasure.
So it's time for the Seraphim update. So, as I spoke about last week, I've pretty much reached the point now where the gameplay scene is modularized. All the major scripts, the player management script, the options, which is always running, by the way, like it has to constantly track volume control and all kinds of other settings and values. Um, the level management script, which spawns enemies and items into the scene. All the major scripts, as well as all of the objects that they instantiate, all of the spawnable game objects that have the model, the texture, the animator, the animation clips, the sound clips, the scripts, the code, everything that goes with like an enemy object packed into a singular prefab, which is spawnable or able to be instantiated via script. And so I've been continuing going with that. And last week I finally reached the point where I'm done with that, save for the power up environments that had been separated out from the gameplay scene, which I did prior to starting any of this because that would just be way too many objects in the hierarchy and completely like bog me down with everything I had to navigate. So now I am tackling the actual power environments and getting those modularized. And because this process has to be, systemized in a way to begin with, and then the rest of the powers, which there are 8 in the game, um, can kind of follow the whatever system I come up with, or whatever logic flow or data flow, if you want to call it that, I come up with. So I'm going to start with the uh, most basic power up environment, and I've chosen Shroud as being that power up environment. Shroud, for those that don't know, is one of the powers in the game, one of 8 powers, and it grants no damage from enemies. So if Shroud spawns in the level and you shoot it and you activate it, it gives you the benefit of not taking any damage from enemies while it's in effect. Shroud's environment has very, very, very little, relatively speaking, uh, animation and extra stuff happening, wheels turning in the background. There's really only an animation clip at the beginning and at the end when the 2 blades start spinning, and then at the end when they start spinning again and take out enemies as the power up environment enters and leaves, which is something like this area of effect type of thing, is something that's consistent with every single power and its environment. Basically, when you activate a power up in Seraphim, it comes in changing the entire background, and comes in with an area of effect attack and leaves with an area of effect attack. And so Shroud really only has motion controlled through code, and again, very little animation or animation clips. So that kind of makes Shroud a good candidate to start with. And so I have begun dismantling Shroud and kind of pretty much rebuilding it from the ground up. Replacing the animator with, or the old animation component with the new animator component, as far as Unity 2017.4. So that is being updated, and well, that's already actually done. I'm still working on Shroud. I'm still trying to get the textures to load from disk where necessary, especially, well, pretty much only for textures that have a language variant, or any sort of volume variant. That includes sound effects, of course, obviously. So there's a lot to do, and I have to figure it all out, and that's what I've been doing this past week, as far as how I'm going to systemize this revamp of the power environments. So I'm in the middle of doing Shroud. And after Shroud, I'm going to move on to one of the others. I haven't decided which one is going to be next. But I'm going to go simplest to most complex. I would say right now the most complex power-up environment in Seraphim is probably Geist. It's also the biggest in terms of file size. So I'm still looking into all that and what order I'm going to do them in. I'm not really too concerned with that right now. I'm trying to pretty much just get everything systemized with Shroud and just kind of focus on one, and then just move on to the next one until all 8 of them are done.
It's always great to get an update on what's going on with Seraphim, so thank you, Ravenheart. I'm going to jump into our first news story now. So on Tuesday, September 10th, PlayStation finally unveiled the long rumored, the long speculated about PlayStation 5 Pro to the world. which they are calling our most advanced and innovative console hardware to date. I don't know why they use the word innovative, but I don't know. I'll let you all be the judge. So on PlayStation 5, currently gamers can toggle the in game settings of different games to focus on either frame rate, like high frame rate, or greater graphical fidelity. So PlayStation 5 Pro aims to enable gamers and developers to achieve the result of having both modes effectively active at the same time. Now it kind of, remains to be seen whether they'll be super successful in that, or if this, model will just effectively maybe create a new category where games will run at higher frames and look better, but maybe not achieve the extremes of either of the two modes. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. They talked about in the broadcast, I should say Mark Cerny talked about in the special broadcast that they did about the PlayStation 5 Pro, about how it's currently about like 75% of gamers choose high frame rate on PlayStation 5 over the 25% that prefer the higher graphical fidelity. So I don't know where, you can, obviously this isn't a conversation, you can't tell me, but just think for a second. What do you prefer? Do you prefer having a really buttery smooth looking experience at 60 frames per second or higher, or do you prefer games looking as visually stunning as best they possibly can? Because when you go for a game, you choose high frames per second, usually the graphics have to suffer as a result, and maybe things look less sharp, maybe they look a little blurry, maybe the draw distance isn't as great, or things in the distance are really fuzzy. Those are the kinds of trade-offs you have to make. And then if you go with the graphical fidelity to ramp all that up, they have to cut the frames in half, or worse sometimes. So how are they going to accomplish this sort of lofty goal of basically having a more PC high-end experience? So these are the three major points that they bring up that are going to help with this. So the upgraded GPU, that's the graphical processing unit. With PS5 Pro, we are upgrading the GPU, and sorry, I'm reading a quote from the blog. We are upgrading to a GPU that has 67 more compute units than the current PS5 console and 28% faster memory. Overall, this enables up to 45% faster rendering for gameplay, making the experience much smoother. Advanced ray tracing, point number 2. We've added even more powerful ray tracing that provides more dynamic reflection and refraction of light. This allows the rays to be cast at double and at times triple the speeds of the current PlayStation 5 console. AI-driven upscaling. This is the third point. We're also introducing PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, an AI-driven upscaling that uses machine learning based on technology to provide super sharp image clarity by adding an extraordinary amount of detail. So those are the three main things that PlayStation 5 Pro is going to have over base PlayStation 5 consoles, including the Slim. Some other new features that it's going to have, really just one notable one and one kind of nice thing. So PlayStation 5 Pro Game Boost. So similar to PlayStation 5 Game Boost, which helps PS4 games run better, PS5 Pro Game Boost helps both PlayStation 4 and PS5 games run even better than they do on PlayStation 4, even without them being made in mind for PlayStation 5 Pro. The other new feature of PlayStation 5 Pro is Wi-Fi 7 compatibility for those with capable routers. So if you have a Wi-Fi 7 router, which I believe those are pretty expensive, you can get, close to wired. I mean, like in some cases, maybe a better than wired internet connection for downloads and stuff. I still think having a wired connection is best for stability and removing interference, other wireless interference. But not everyone can run a cable to their PlayStation 5. I totally get that. So some previously released games will be receiving new updates to have the games natively take advantage of PlayStation 5 Pro. Some upcoming games are also going to launch soon with PlayStation 5 Pro compatibility. So I'm going to list a few of the titles they mentioned on the PlayStation blog now. So Alan Wake 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Demon Souls, the remake for PS5, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Gran Turismo 7, Hogwarts Legacy, Horizon Forbidden West, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, The Crew Motorfest, The First Descendant, and The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. So all these games will natively, after being updated, take advantage of the PlayStation 5 Pro hardware. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of PlayStation 5 gamers have probably already played through these games. If they're like really feverish for first party, big budget games, they probably played these games at launch. So I don't know if this is going to inspire people to go back to these games. As someone who hasn't played a few of these games, many of these games actually, it's to me it's kind of an enticing proposition. It's like, oh, okay, I haven't gotten around to some of these yet, so as PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be the best way to experience those games, at least from a visual and performance standard. That's kind of an exciting proposition, right? But what about that price? So brace yourself, people. Sony is asking consumers to shell out $699.99 to purchase the PlayStation 5 Pro in the Americas. And that's probably the cheapest place on the planet to buy it. Other regions, like the UK and parts of Europe, it's like €100 or £100 more than the US is paying. So while I'm going to complain about the price, but we have it the easiest in comparison to others. So what does that get you? That gets you the console, the DualSense controller, a horizontal stand, and probably an HDMI cable, I think. They didn't really detail that on the blog, but I think all the PlayStation consoles now come with an HDMI cable. So, but what's not included here? Let's talk about that for a second. So the PlayStation 5 Pro, the horizontal stand cannot be turned into a vertical stand the same way the launch PlayStation 5 is. So the launch PlayStation 5 comes with a stand that you can kind of twist and contort to either hold your system vertically or hold it horizontally. So that's a separate purchase if you're really keen on having your PlayStation 5 be standing straight up and down. The really big part that's a bummer to me for a variety of reasons is that the PlayStation 5 Pro does not include a disk drive at all. So it is compatible, as you may have kind of put one and one together, with the same disk drive that the PlayStation 5 Pro Slim uses. The PlayStation 5 Digital Slim Edition uses. So you can purchase one of those for $80 and essentially add it into your PlayStation 5 Pro. But to me, the fact that the Pro console, the professional PlayStation, doesn't include a disk drive in box is kind of absurd. So they're asking you to spend $200 more than the base PlayStation 5 console that does have a disk drive. And then you have to spend another $80 if you want a disk drive. So after, let's say, tax and the optional purchase of the disk drive, probably looking at close to $850 for the PlayStation 5 Pro. That's crazy, right? That is, honestly, to me, it is unacceptable. Now, I'm part of the problem because, as you heard me say earlier, I've already bought the disk drive. So if you're wondering, am I going to get the PlayStation 5 Pro? It's a definite yes. And my reasoning is twofold, I think. One, like I said earlier, I think it's a great idea to have a console with a removable disk drive. I wish more electronics had removable parts. Replaceable parts that, consumers can easily just pop in, pop off without having to do any major working. There's no soldering required or anything like that. So that's a good thing. So, I'm not going to buy a PlayStation 5 Slim. It makes more sense to get the Pro. I may as well have the version of PlayStation 5 that will run PlayStation 5 games and PlayStation 4 games as best as they possibly can run. There's no guarantee about what's going to happen with PlayStation 6. Is it going to have a disk drive? It probably will have a disk drive. It'll probably be an optional purchase. They'll probably be really limited in supply. Is it going to be backwards compatible with PS4? Nobody knows. It might be that PS5 Pro ends up being the most definitive way to play PlayStation 4 games. And if that's the case, I want to have the console that can do that. The other reasoning is if you're going to get one of these Pro consoles, the only time it even makes remote amount of sense to do it is right when the console comes out. Because if you wait a year, you wait 2 years, then 2-3 years later, PlayStation 6 is out. And then it's like, well, why'd you spend $700 just to spend 3 years with that console if you're going to get PlayStation 6 early on, right? So it makes sense to get it when it's brand new. And again, this is just my feelings. People can do whatever they want. When it comes to consoles, I am an early adopter. I do go all in on day one, typically speaking. I did kind of flip-flop on this one. It took me a day or two of kind of thinking about it to decide on whether I was going to go for the PlayStation 5 Pro or not. And again, it's funny that I'm thinking about it from the perspective of like, I want my PS4 games to look great as best as they possibly can, and other people are like thinking, I want Grand Theft Auto 6 as best as it can possibly be. So I don't know. I'm kind of in a weird, different area than maybe a lot of other people are with this console. But that's kind of just my thoughts on it, how I'm rationalizing it. I'm not excited about dropping $700 on a console. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, the PlayStation 5 was, I think, the most expensive console I had ever purchased when that came out. And now I'm upping the ante, 4 years later, for PlayStation 5 Pro. Now, I did get a PlayStation 4 Pro at launch as well. And that's a console that I greatly benefited from, just because it felt like a pretty significant leap forward for PlayStation 4, at least from a gameplay loading and like smoothness kind of perspective. Like I saw noticeable results playing on the PlayStation 4 Pro as compared to the PlayStation 4 base model. Now, there's a part of me that is also like, I feel like we haven't seen the true potential of the PlayStation 5 yet, and we are already getting a PlayStation 5 Pro. Like, Naughty Dog still has not released a new game on PlayStation 5, and the more and more I think about it, it seems more and more likely that they will never release a new game on PlayStation 5. I feel like their next major new original game, whether it's a new Uncharted or a new Last of Us or something else altogether, is going to be, it's going to either come out at the very tail end of PlayStation 5. It's going to be cross-generational. I'm not totally sure. But just given how long games take to make, especially games from Naughty Dog, I think it's very possible that they effectively skipped this generation and that all we got were effectively remasters of the first Last of Us and second Last of Us. And that's kind of a bummer. But it is what it is. Games take longer to make. They take more money to make. I think, I don't know, part of that is a choice. I do think developers could make smaller games, but they don't always have the final say on that. Sometimes the publisher is breathing down their neck saying they want bigger, they want better, they want prettier, they want more graphics, they want more power, they want more frames. I don't know. I think there's opportunities, and I think Astrobot is showing that very result, that you can make a really fun, feels big. Maybe it's not an open world action adventure game or whatever people want. It's not a crazy narrative-driven game with dialogue and death and, gratuitous nudity. It's Astrobot, and, it's a relatively big game made by a small team. But, it's 12 to, 20 hours to do everything in the whole game. And so I don't know. I do hope, if nothing else, Astrobot becomes sort of a lesson for Sony. Like, hey, we can do more of this. We don't always have to do these giant 100-hour, 50-hour epic saga games. We can just do something light, fun, playful, makes you smile. Like Astrobot is, like, I think it's the number one most critically reviewed game of the year so far. Probably going to win Game of the Year at many different outlets. And it's going to deserve those wins so bad. So yeah, I really do hope that game serves as a wake-up call, not just for Sony, but for the whole industry. Basically, Nintendo's the only one who's been doing stuff like Astrobot. And it's nice to see PlayStation dip their toes into that and hopefully really see that and, like, give us a new Sly Cooper, give us a new Ratchet and Clank. Well, we know that there's a Ratchet and Clank coming, and we had one not too long ago. But give us a new Jack and Daxter. I mean, come on. It doesn't have to be the original developers making those games. I understand that some of those developers have moved on from those characters, but it's possible. Give us a new Ape Escape. Oh my god. Astrobot has shown that, like, hey, there's still love for these older titles. So let's do something with that love. Let's turn that love into money, guys. You can do it. Give the players what they want and get rewarded in return for doing a good job. It's easy. It's free. So I went off on a little tangent there. But pre-orders launch September 26th on PlayStation Direct, which is PlayStation's direct-to-consumer website where they cut out the middleman of Target, Amazon, Best Buy, keep all the money for themselves, and go straight to the consumer. And generally, PlayStation Direct's been a great way. I think it launched with PlayStation 5 to buy new games, consoles, accessories, things like that. And generally, they're pretty good about doing launch day delivery. The other thing is that they will then launch at other retailers on October 10th. So effectively, they're going to kind of get all the people that really want it or that are kind of like got that FOMO feeling to order it from PlayStation Direct, hopefully, and then later you can purchase it at other retailers. So I don't know what the play here is. Like, I know at GameStop, you get a bunch of points if you buy it at GameStop, which you can then redeem as like coupons and credit at the store. But if you get it from PlayStation, you lock in that pre-order early. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So, I don't know what the play is here. I haven't decided what route I'm going to go. Maybe if it's possible to order it at PlayStation Direct and then cancel it if I get it somewhere else. Or I might just strike whatever opportunity I can get to first. I don't know if it's going to be, website crashing, panic on the PlayStation Direct store or not. Either way, I wonder if Sony is going to overestimate demand for PlayStation 5 Pro and make too many and they're going to be sitting on store shelves, or if they're going to underestimate it, knowing that the price is so high, knowing that people are like really being critical of that and laughing at it, deservedly so. And are they going to just come at it from that kind of perspective and just not make very many of them to begin with and just kind of play it real tight, So if they go that way, then it could be a pain in the butt to actually get your hands on one of these consoles. But, we'll never really know unless, they're transparent for some reason. Go, hey guys, just so you know, it's going to be extra limited quantities at launch, But it seems doubtful to me that they'd say something like that. I'm sure they want to come across as confident and not like basically already admitting that they don't think it's going to be a popular product. So for our next story, we're going to be talking about Microsoft. So a couple days after Sony announced their big PS5 Pro news, Microsoft made their own massive announcement too. No, it's not that they're making an Xbox Pro console. It's that they're having yet another round of layoffs to their gaming division. So here's the full statement from Xbox boss Phil Spencer. It's titled Changes Coming to Microsoft Gaming. For the past year, our goal has been to minimize disruption while welcoming new teams and enabling them to do their best work. As part of aligning our post-acquisition team structure and managing our business, we have made the decision to eliminate approximately 650 roles across Microsoft Gaming, mostly corporate and supporting functions, to organize our business for long-term success. I know that this is difficult news to hear. We are deeply grateful for the contributions of our colleagues who are learning they are impacted. In the US, we're supporting them with exit packages that include severance, extended health care, and outplacement services to help with their transition. Outside the US, packages will differ according to location. With these changes, our corporate and supporting teams and resources are aligned for sustainable future growth and can better support our studio teams and business units with programs and resources that can scale to meet their needs. Separately, as part of running the business, there are some impacts to other teams as they adapt to shifting priorities and manage the life cycle and performances of games. No games, devices, experiences are being canceled, and no studios being closed as part of these adjustments today. Throughout our team's history, we have had great moments, and we have had challenging ones. Today is one of the challenging days. I know that going through more changes like this is hard, but even in the most trying of times, this team has been able to come together and show one another care and kindness as we work to continue delivering for our players. For the players! We appreciate your support as we navigate these changes, and we thank you for your compassion and respect for each other. Phil. So Microsoft is cutting another 650 jobs from their gaming division. This time the layoffs are specifically targeting Activision Blizzard, who they acquired last year in a huge merger, primarily in administrative and support roles, as Phil said. This means lots of non-development roles, maybe, we don't have exact details, but probably marketing, quality assurance, and in-game support are likely to be affected. I don't know, some people debate whether quality assurance and in-game support, those kinds of things, are development. I think they're part of like active service, maybe a live service kind of component. I mean, quality assurance is definitely part of the development process, I feel. You know, it's a back and forth between the QA testers and the developers to let them know what is and isn't working. Rick might say differently, Ravenheart. But this means, but still, like some developers have to be affected, right? What did Phil say here? He said, separately, as part of running the business, there are some impacts to the other teams as they adapt to shifting priorities and manage the life cycle and performance of games. So that implies there's at least some development layoffs happening, and it turns out Stephen Toledo of GameFile, which is his own, I don't know what you call it, newsletter, was able to get some inside info regarding that very subject. It seems as if Microsoft has quietly, as they possibly can without naming any names, portions of Activision Blizzard teams working on some of their mobile titles. And that includes Warcraft Rumble, which I think only released about a year ago, and Call of Duty Warzone Mobile. So, two big, massive franchise IPs are being affected by some of these layoffs as well. We don't know how many of this 650 are developers on those titles, but I would maybe 50 to 100 of those numbers are affected. It's crazy to think that there could be, nearly 1,000 administrative people walking around at Activision Blizzard. That just sounds kind of crazy to me. I mean, at this point, I would have thought some of those would have been affected by the layoffs in January. Remember, they lost 1,900 people back in January, and now another 650. I mean, when is it going to end? What does Phil Spencer have to do to right this ship enough that employees can stop living in perpetual fear? I don't know. Maybe he will, maybe never. I would have to imagine most corporate employers probably want their employees to feel that sort of heat, like, am I next, like every minute of every day, so they're performing their best. At least, maybe that's how they look at it. I don't know that that's like a healthy way to have your employees feel as they come to work each day. And I would have to guess that uh, if you were an employee at Microsoft and you've now survived 2 rounds of layoffs, I don't know, do you feel invincible, or do you feel like next time it's me? So, real quick, I'm going to talk about a shirt I have here in my collection. Now, this shirt is I don't know, not quite khaki, but it is like a beige sort of color. Um, it is a size medium, crew neck, short sleeve t shirt, as they usually are. Um, and this was a shirt I got at Comic Con in 2022 at Udon's booth. Now, Udon, for those of you that don't know, they work very often with Capcom and other Japanese like game companies, and basically license and localize merchandise as well as create original merchandise for the Western market. And so for the last 3 years at Comic Con, they have been doing the Street Fighter 6 t shirts. And this one that I have here is the 2022, the first year they did it. And it has Chun Li on the front of it. And the art is done by a very famous Street Fighter artist. I think her name is Mita Chisato, something like that. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, which I definitely am. And so it's got Chun Li on here. It says San Diego. It's got like a cool like blue dragon and stuff in the background. And then on the sleeve, it has the Street Fighter 6 logo, um, and just kind of it's sort of like an emblem style logo. It's not the full logo for the game. So that's my shirt. I believe Ravenheart also has a shirt, so let's go ahead and insert his comment now.
So what I'm wearing is a white crew neck short sleeve t-shirt. On the front, there's a black and gray and pink pattern of Monokuma with the Monokuma's eye sort of doing this swirl thing like he's moving really fast, and then some pink lightning kind of shooting out from below him. Um, and on the back is the Hope's Peak Academy logo, and then copyright Spike Chunsoft Limited. So this is one of the Danganronpa t-shirts from the Hot Topic collection. This might actually be my favorite one of all of them, just because the design is so simple, the colors are so simple. It's a character like the other ones, but it's not full color so much. It's more of a black and white, and then the signature pink, that's the color of the blood in the games. So yeah, another Danganronpa t-shirt from my collection. I do really like this one, although it is a little stained around the collar. I'm going to see if I can do something about that.
Okay, we're going to be hearing from Ravenheart again shortly because you may remember a bunch of drama last year surrounding Unity, the uh, game engine for game developers. Originally kind of started as sort of an indie tool, and now it's become massive. Games like Genshin Impact and others use this tool. So Unity's runtime fee rollout from last year was a big disaster. I won't go into all the details because Ravenheart is here with his report. Roll it.
So if you've been listening to the Bit Beacon for any great length of time, you'll know that the story of Unity and everything it's been doing and everything it's been going through as a company has been an ongoing saga throughout the history of our podcast. Uh, Beginning with episode 3, the Vita Means Life episode. That was when our first story concerning the departure of former CEO John Riccitiello from Unity. Since then, or on his way out the door, I should say, he implemented these install fees, which ended up getting rebranded as runtime fees, quote unquote. And what they were small fees per install of any developer's particular game, based on how many copies they had sold. So there was this price chart that Unity had released at the time, that showed if you sold over 1 million copies, you would need to pay 54 cents per install to Unity as the publisher. If you had sold less than 500,000 or whatever the numbers were, you had to pay 80 cents per install, and it caused a big controversy among developers. Needless to say, it's pretty bad. Like, that model did not go over well, and raised a lot of questions about, what if my game's free to play? Do I still need to pay Unity? Ultimately, the answer came out to be no, but that wasn't even specified in the initial announcement of these runtime fees when John Riccitiello's Unity first announced them. So since then, John Riccitiello has left Unity, and Matt Bromberg is the current CEO, and he has announced now that Unity would be reverting back to its existing seat-based subscription model. And I'm going to read some of what Matthew Bromberg wrote. This is going to sound like I'm reading an article, but this is actually the CEO's words on the official Unity blog that he wrote. So, after deep consultation with our community, customers, and partners, we've made the decision to cancel the runtime fee for our game's customers, effective immediately. Non-gaming industry customers are not impacted by this modification. So, in consultation with our community, customers, and partners, mostly via complaints. I'm sure the complaints sparked conversations, but that wasn't, that's not how that went initially. They didn't just ask the customers what they think. The customer spoke up, and then Unity, of course, got into the meat and potatoes of what was wrong with what they were doing, their new model that John Riccitiello introduced. Over the last 20 years, we've partnered with brilliant designers and developers, artists and engineers, publishers and platforms to build a world where great games could be built by anyone for everyone. We called it democratizing game development, and it remains our core mission today. And that's true of Unity when they first began with their engine. It was democratizing game development. It made game development accessible to somebody who didn't have access to a major publisher. And game engines at the time costed, a 5-figure fee to use at all. So, yeah, that's true. And, yeah, Unity had a big role in just the onset of indie development in general. However, we can't pursue that mission in conflict with our customers. At its heart, it must be a partnership built on trust. I've been able to connect with many of you over the last 3 months, and I've heard time and time again that you want a strong Unity, and understand that price increases are a necessary part of what enables us to invest in moving gaming forward. But those increases needn't come in a novel and controversial new form. We want to deliver value at a fair price in the right way, so that you will continue to feel comfortable building your business over the long term with Unity as your partner. And we're confident that if we're good partners and deliver great software and services, sorry, my phone screen. We've barely scratched the surface of what we can do together. So we're reverting to our existing seat-based subscription model for all gaming customers, including those who adopt Unity 6, the most performant and stable version of Unity yet, later this year. So this in general, I think is obviously good. It's good for me as a developer. I think it's good for everyone. This is the right way to go. I'm going to get to some more stuff that John Riccitiello introduced during his time as Unity CEO. But as far as, the runtime fees go, yeah, getting rid of them is the right move for sure. Here's what you can expect according to current CEO Matthew Bromberg. Unity Personal, as announced last year, Unity Personal will remain free and will be doubling the current revenue and funding ceiling from $100,000 to $200,000, which was announced when this whole announcement of the runtime fees was initially put forward. So it looks like they're keeping the good stuff and getting rid of the bad stuff. What that means, the revenue ceiling that they're talking about, it wasn't initially after you make $100,000 off of your game, you're required to upgrade to Unity Pro. So they raised that ceiling from 100,000 to 200,000, which was a good move, and they did that under John Riccitiello, and it looks like Matthew Bromberg is keeping that, which is good. This means more of you can use Unity at no cost. The Made with Unity splash screen will become optional for Unity personal games made with Unity 6 when it launches later this year. So that was another really good benefit that John Riccitiello had announced, was that Unity splash screen was going to be optional. Up until this, it had been just mandatory if you used Unity Personal. And only with Unity Pro could you actually get rid of it from your game. So Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise. We'll be modifying subscription pricing and the qualifying annual revenue threshold effective January 1st, 2025. These changes will apply to all new and existing Unity Pro and Enterprise customers when you purchase, upgrade, or renew a subscription on or after this date. Unity Pro, an 8% subscription price increase to $2,200 USD annually per seat, will apply to Unity Pro. Unity Pro will be required for customers with more than 200,000 USD of total annual revenue and funding, like I explained earlier. Unity Enterprise. This is for the really big studios that are selling millions of copies of their game. A 25% subscription price increase will apply to Unity Enterprise. Unity Enterprise will be required for customers with more than 25 million USD of total annual revenue and funding. A minimum okay, so they must have added and funding to that, which makes me think if you get an investor and they give you money, Unity counts that as revenue basically toward your ceiling, which is interesting. I never noticed that. Continuing on, a minimum subscription requirement may also apply. Because this set of our largest customers have unique needs and use many of our products and services, we'll be contacting everyone in the days ahead to discuss customized packaging. Unity Enterprise users get a lot of hands-on support, like a lot of 24-hour speak to a representative, speak to an engineer type of support. That's why it costs so much. So that is the blog that Matthew Bromberg put forward or published. And I wanted to talk about a couple other things. Namely, and one thing I did want to bring back up, that part mentioned price hikes or, increase pricing. That's going to happen. Like, you know, I think developers do largely uh, accept that that's just the nature of things. Like, things are going to get more expensive, obviously. I think the real issue, the real controversy, had to do with just changing forms the way that they did under John Riccitiello, and making it so that even your free to play game, that was it's not the case, but one of the concerns was even your free to play game is going to cause you to be charged 80 cents per install, which makes no sense, and a developer wouldn't be able to support that. Unity later came out and specified that that's not the case. Free-to-play games would not be charged a runtime fee, but it just goes to show how little sense that model made to begin with. While Unity was under its former CEO, John Riccitiello, there were a lot of smaller controversies that took place. I don't know if controversies is the right word, but just events, incidences that you could consider bad. Weta was one of the studios that Unity had acquired back when everybody was acquiring every studio they could buy. Weta was a technology firm, one of many that Unity picked up and then shuttered due to, I guess, just Unity wanting to trim the fat. And that resulted in 250 some people being laid off. There were several other layoffs within Unity internally of people, thousands of people just being laid off. I think Unity, if I remember correctly, got down to like 25% of its original staff, which is crazy numbers in terms of layoffs. One other controversial thing that happened with Unity under John Riccitiello was that Unity started taking on contracts with the Department of Defense and the United States government. And a lot of game developers felt that their engine that they use would be used for developing weapons and that sort of thing. Which, okay. Honestly, I think I should preface this with John Riccitiello kind of, during his tenure at Unity, putting forward this mentality that Unity is not just a game engine anymore. It is a 3D software, 3D development software. It is an environment in which more can be created than just beyond just game development. And I'm going to be honest, I kind of agree with that mentality. I think that's a good thing. I'm someone who wants games and game technology to be taken seriously, or more seriously than it has been in the past. And I do think that game technology being implemented in serious ways beyond just game development is ultimately a net positive for games. And I do like the idea of games, or Unity, being used for utility programs, and even I could see, robot implementation with robotics and that sort of thing. It's suited for that. Unity, you can do so much within Unity, and there are so many different technological plugins that go into Unity, text to speech, all kinds of different physics plugins, fingerprint technology, and that, like, there's a plugin for everything at this point for Unity. And you could build so much with it. It doesn't have to be just games. So I actually do kind of side with John Riccitiello in his philosophy. I don't, obviously I'm sure his philosophy there was, and everything else that he did pretty much, was motivated financially, whereas my interests are solely with technology development and design, because that's my passion. But nonetheless, the way I see it does kind of align with the way John Riccitiello saw it in that regard, in the regard of Unity expanding beyond just the peripheral of game development. Whereas Matthew Bromberg has come back around with this current update to say that we're returning to our core, we're returning to what Unity used to be, and game development is our focus. It is how we started, it is what we want to be ultimately. And while I understand where he's coming from completely, and I do actually appreciate what he's saying there. Um, I I don't know that I completely agree, but I respect his mentality. Um, I just think John Riccitiello's mentality in this regard is the better one, in my opinion, and will do more for games in the long run. So in light of that, I should have explained that before I started getting into the Department of Defense contracts. Under John Riccitiello, Unity started taking on contracts from all kinds of different larger non-gaming companies, as well as the Department of Defense, and that was controversial among developers. I don't have confirmation of this, but I'm certain that it was in respect to the development of training simulations. What else in the context of the Department of Defense would Unity be used for? It had to be training simulations. I'm pretty certain. So at the end of the day, both of these guys are big CEOs. John Riccitiello, you can look him up. He's been everywhere. EA, all whole bunch of different companies. Um, Came into Unity, served as CEO, did a bunch of stuff, and now it's all getting reverted. So it's like he didn't even need to be there to begin with. Like I say, both these guys are CEOs. The CEO types, career CEOs that think their company's product is neat. But in the end, John Riccitiello once said, some developers are effing idiots. And Matthew Bromberg has said recently within this update that their goal is to get its head on straight, speaking about Unity. So I'm going to have to side with Matthew Bromberg as being just a positive way forward compared to John Riccitiello, at least in general. So that's the story about Unity, and that's where we're at with the runtime fees being completely removed, and Unity going back to its old self, which is great.
Our final story for this episode is about Annapurna Interactive. For those of you who don't know, Annapurna Interactive is a branch of the media company Annapurna Pictures, which is known for movies such as Bombshell, Booksmart, Her, and many others. Annapurna Interactive, though, focuses primarily on helping fund, publish, and market indie games. And just last week, or in the last couple of weeks, it came to light that all 25 employees at Annapurna Interactive resigned en masse recently. So they all just up and quit. So many employees from Annapurna Interactive team originally came from Sony Santa Monica's studio, where they once fostered indie talent and their games like Journey, The Unfinished Swan, and Hohokum. Sony Santa Monica these days, and for most of its life, has been known for games like God of War. So while they were focusing on those big games, they had a smaller team that was helping foster indie talent. But at some point, about a decade ago, maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, the company Sony Santa Monica basically decided that they weren't going to focus on those games anymore. I think it was shortly after the release of Journey. So many of these employees moved on from publishing indie games there, stuck together, and got connected with Annapurna Pictures. So Annapurna Pictures and Annapurna Interactive and its staffers were in talks to spin off the studio from being under the thumb of the movie studio effectively. This would have given them more autonomy and allowed them to make, decisions that matter to them rather than taking directions from people who maybe didn't make games or weren't involved in the games industry but still had feelings on what Annapurna Interactive should be doing with their time and money. So there's been no comment from the staff, the group of staffers that left Annapurna, but the president of Annapurna Pictures, Megan Ellison, who is the daughter of, I think, Oracle founder Larry Ellison, she said the following in a statement obtained by Deadline. Our top priority is continuing to support our developer and publishing partners during this transition. We're committed to not only our existing slate of games, but also expanding our presence in the interactive space as we continue to look for opportunities to take a more integrated approach to linear and interactive storytelling across film and TV, gaming, and theater. So really what she's doing with this statement here is further cementing that she believes that gaming is something that should be under her purview and not something that should be spun off into its own separate entity effectively, even though it still carry the Annapurna name. She doesn't say anything about the employees who were there. We don't know. Again, we really don't know anything what they're planning. I have some speculation. Annapurna Pictures does plan to hire new staff to take the place of the previous staff and continue their work. Still, questions remain, especially for the developers who were working with Annapurna Interactive to fund, market, and publish their games. I mean, imagine, let's put Rick in the shoes of one of these developers. Seraphim has been signed to Annapurna for help publishing, marketing, that kind of thing, right? And now all of a sudden, all those people he was working with to get his game out the door have all up and vanished. On one hand, that feels a little rough. If you're those developers, you might feel a little scorned by these people who you thought were trying to help you, and maybe they were. We don't know exactly what happened in these closed door meetings, so it's a little tough to make a judgment call either way quite yet. What I do know is that these developers have been working together for more than or these publishers, these indie kind of tastemakers, you could say, have been working together for 15 years now, some of them, and they're hoping to carry over some of these developers with them. It's likely that they have contracts signed, so that won't be possible, but I do wonder if after these current games get out, will some of these developers then jump ship from Annapurna and go wherever these new tastemakers might set up shop at, whether that means they sign up with yet another company, which I think would probably be a mistake for them, as they seem to want their own independence in a way. I suspect that they'll probably reform into a new company of their own making, where they kind of retain that control and autonomy that they've been seeking in recent years. So again, this story is kind of developing. It's semi-breaking, so we should have more on it in the future as more details kind of become available. Now, this is the part where I would say end transmission, but somebody else wants to say it this week.
End transmission.